I'd like to draw your mind to First Samuel chapter 17. It's a wonderful text, and I hope that in your private time that you'd read through it. I'm going to be looking at a text this morning. Sorry, that's going to be the subtext. Sorry, the narrative against which we will be dealing with our topic for this morning. This morning I want to ask you a few questions just by way of introduction. Are you dealing with something very difficult this morning? Something that has been hounding you, that has been almost tapping you on the shoulder every day, and you are literally exhausted. You are at tether's end. You feel frustrated. You feel like giving up. You feel that nothing you do, nothing you throw at it is helping the situation at all. Are you feeling today that your situation is out of control to the point where you feel that, you know what, I don't even know if God hears me anymore. I don't even know whether what I'm trying to achieve will ever be achievable. I think if you really want to feel hopeless and helpless, do yourself a favor and watch the news. It's one of those things that are pretty challenging, I think, for all of us. This morning early I was driving on the road. I think that's where people normally drive. And I was listening to the radio, and they had Mr. Trump come on the radio, and he said he's met with Kim Jong-un this week, and he says, we love each other. We really, really love each other. We write letters to each other about how much we love each other. And I thought to myself, that's a huge change in our world, that these two very powerful men could talk about disarming things of nuclear wars and that kind of thing. So miracles do happen, if you know what I mean. So I think despite all the challenges we face, I was very interested. He spoke with such love as he's talking about another woman. So I was just like, okay, cool, I can understand that, but it's like, no. Anyway, let me say the following to you. The narrative of 1 Samuel 17 is a wonderful story. It's a story of a young man, a little shepherd boy, Don, of name is David. And David is going to visit his brothers. And as he rocks up there, to visit them, he goes across, and twice a day he discovers that this particular man, Goliath, comes out, stands before them, and he shouts and taunts the Israelite army. And every day he steps forward, he says, choose a man and have him come down to me if he's able, and fight and kill me. We will become your subjects, but if I overcome and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us as slaves. I want you to imagine where we are as a congregation, the church building is. I want you to imagine a massive mountain this side, massive mountain at Glengarry, Pick and Pay. And Fairtrees Road down the road here is pretty much where the valley is. So I want you to imagine that here stands these two powerhouses, the Israelite army and the Philistine army, and both of them are just shouting and bantering across this wonderful divide. And what happens is he makes his challenge. But I want you to have a perspective on this man. He's about 9 meters tall. He weighs about, 12 feet is my measurement. What is 12 feet? 12 feet. Is that 4 meters? 6 meters. Okay, do you guys want to vote this one out? All right, we was 9 feet or 12 feet. I've got 12 feet. Let's go with 9 feet, okay. He was a big guy. He was a huge guy. And here's the key. You'll find out that apparently his armor was about 65 kilograms heavy. So this guy rocks up there and he starts to taunt the army. Now, we know the Israelite cats were pretty short and they were agrarian guys, so they weren't stocky, big guys. And he rocks up and he starts to taunt these guys. Needless to say, this standoff goes on for about 40 days. And here enters in old David, innocuous young boy. He's a shepherd guy, youngest of 8 sons, and His 3 older brothers are on the front line fighting for Saul or with Saul, and he witnesses this challenge every single day. The text talks about he's accused out of selfish curiosity to see what the war is about, but the key behind it is he's on the scene. And he rocks up there, and as he watches the Israeli army becoming nervous of these guys, he looks at this nonsense and he says, you know what? I'm actually very upset by this guy. Here's a youngster that rocks up and he says, I'll fight this guy. I'll take him on. I will remove the disgrace from Israel. Because how is it possible that someone, no matter how tall, no matter who he is, can come and taunt God's army, the army of the living God? We know the story that he was chided by his brothers and he was criticized for being there. But the one key is that his brothers had no success. All they had under their belt is that they were professionally trained. Well, as professionally as the Israeli army would have been. And then David says, let no one lose heart on account of this giant Philistine. Your servant David will go and fight him. Now, I think if you were looking for a Van der Merwe joke, that would be it. This young guy saying, I'll take him on. Right. Let's go back there, guys. Remember when we were on the front line? And Goliath rocked up? What did David say? Let me go up there. I'm going to handle him. Ha, 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 ha. David was as serious as anything. You must remember, David was not a soldier. He's not a warrior by any stretch of the imagination. He was only a shepherd boy. And we find out from the text that a man by the name of Goliath was trained as a soldier from a boy. In other words, his skills were honed to the very best that they ever could have been. So you're not dealing with a Johnny-come-lately in terms of armed combat. And more than likely, because of his arrogance, everybody else knew that it was a fait accompli that they would win this war. But I want you to listen to David's reply. He says, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, I struck it, rescued the sheep from its mouth, and when it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. Here's the key. What David was recounting right there, and we'll deal with this a little bit later, is he's saying, I hear everything that you said. But even when I was in the field, alone, God was with me. And then we find that Saul steps forward and he says to him, listen, my boy, if that's what you want to do, the Lord be with you. And here's the key, that David then steps forward and Saul, the most unusual man, turns around and says, by the way, do you want to come with me to my dressing room? He takes off his armor and he puts it on David. They weigh about the same. 65 kilograms, David, 65 kilograms of armor. He tries this on. He says, it's not going to work. And so many times, that's how the world operates. It gives us coping mechanisms and stuff that, well-intentioned, well-equipped, does not prepare you for that which is of a spiritual nature. You see, God prepares his people slightly different. I want to read a text out of 2 Corinthians, which we studied at our class on a Wednesday night. He says, the weapons we fight with are not the weapons of this world. On the contrary, we have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedience to Christ. In other words, Paul's saying, in that context, and I would imagine that they're talking from the same mind, that they're saying despite what the worldly view is, there's an inner reality that I, as a person, submit every single thought in obedience to God. I take it captive and I enslave it so that it can be obedient to God and His will for my life. What does he do? He goes up against this giant. He goes up against a man who is clearly far more experienced than he is. One that is twice as big as he. One that is dressed in armor far more superior than David has. Only he has sandals on, slingshot, and a bag of stones. That's it. Sorry, he had pants on as well. And here's the key. As he walks in front of, coming to encounter David, he walks with his shield bearer in front of him. Somebody has to carry this guy's shield. In other words, you're not looking at a Johnny-come-lately. He is the cream of the crop. So they meet each other. Question on the table is, what are you going to do with the challenges that faces you? Of that magnitude, of that kind of deliberate, defiantly shouting at you daily, I will take you, I will destroy you, whatever it is. If it's addiction, if it is sin in your life, daily it shouts in front of you. David made the comment in Psalms chapter 51, and he says, my sin is ever before me. Maybe today you're sitting with a challenge that no matter which way you turn, no matter which way you look, it's always in front of you, there, ready to taunt you and to tell you that I'm here to destroy you. David, according to scriptures, drops down and he selects 5 smooth stones from a little river. He picks up the 5 stones, and one asks the question, why 5 smooth stones? It tells us it wasn't jagged stones, because as we know that jagged stones fly erratically. They also fly slower because there's much more air drag. They won't go the distance because, yes, there's so much flying up against them. A jagged rock will not hit the target. And so, through his experimentation, looking after the sheep, he knew what was the best equipment for him. Selected that and put it in his sling, and he says, let's go. If you've ever been hunting in any area of your life, or if you're in the veld, and you with a 30-06, you don't take just one bullet. You take a few more, right, you and Juan? You take about minimum 5, and some of us takes 30, or 2 boxes. They're about 40 each. So, it's depending on your groove, but, you go there and you go well prepared, because the chances are that you may just miss. But we're going to start looking at some things that hopefully would be helpful for you and I within the context of our walk. But before that, there's something that David said that struck me that was slightly different or slightly similar to what our Lord Jesus Christ said. Just listen to this. David doesn't cringe, and he says, this day the Lord will hand you over to me. Today I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you all into our hands. Few things that are profound. He talks about victory prior to the engagement in battle. Jesus did the same. He says, I will give up my life, and in 3 days I will be raised again. Right here. You will not hold me in the grave. You see, sometimes we are in our Gethsemanes. But sometimes we must move past the betrayal into the engagement and say, God will give me victory because He is my God. So many times the reason for our failure is we personalize the battle. And we say it's about me. Maybe it is about you. And the reason it is about you is because you have not surrendered your life to God. Because if it is true that you are God's property, the battle and the victory belongs to God. Even no matter how badly stacked things are against you. In other words, you need to start shifting in the way that you view the world. Johan had a brilliant perspective this morning. We need to look at the world through God's eyes. And the minute you do that, You start to see possibility when the world sees impossibility. It's a personal issue that maybe you are facing today. Maybe it's a health issue. An ugly diagnosis that is not good. A wonderful lady passed away this last week. Nola and Arthur Engelbrecht, their daughter, passed away of cancer. Horrible, horrible illness. You see, maybe you're dealing with a problem in your marriage, brethren. Maybe it's the rebellion of a child or a grandchild which you don't have answers for. But the point is, you are God's. And that battle is His. And so often we personalize and we feel the failure. We feel the shortcomings. We feel the overwhelming odds. But we forget that it is God who fights for us. Maybe today you're battling with finances, that money's run, you've got more month than money. Maybe today you've got an addiction that really got you doing things that you never thought you would do. You lie, you cheat, you deceive. You threaten, you steal, and you think it is okay. It's not okay. It is holding you captive. Maybe today you are battling in terms of grief and loss, which is so overwhelming, and there are days when you feel in control, and there's days you don't. The idea of spiritual warfare is a reality, and all of us battle with it daily. And as a church, we must face our battles. Face our battles daily, because we know that the battle belongs to God. The other day, Peter and myself drove into Khayelitsha, into Ndlovini. I think it was Friday. As we drove into Khayelitsha, the first thing I saw were police vans. And normally when you see police vans, you're more than likely to see a massive protest going on. But this was a peaceful protest. And Peter and I drove past, and as we drove past, people shouted, "Kunjani Mfundisi!" And I shouted out the car. I thought, "Thank you, here is somebody." I said, "Yes." I thought, just don't throw stones, okay? Just don't throw stones. And we drove through, and people were smiling and laughing, and it was chanting and stuff. I almost caught the rhythm. Don't know how I'm going to do that, but we just drove. We got past. We did our business, and we were coming back. But before we left that particular area, as we drove past, one of the leaders and I spoke just outside the church building, and she said, "Remember that discussion we had with the leaders," and said, "Stop destroying our infrastructure. Stop destroying what we have. Let's build what we have. Let's build on that." And I looked at this. It was a peaceful protest. Not one tire burnt, not one building sacked. And I pray that somehow what you and I might have said there might have made a difference. You see, sometimes we pick up the wrong stones. We pick up the wrong stones, and it is ineffective against the battle that we are facing. There's 5 stones, and I'm literally briefly going to go through this very quickly. The first one, our faith must be prompted by history. What's your history with God? How old are you? 30, 40, 50, 60, 70? In Ziggy's case, 80? Surely somewhere you would have seen God reach into your hand, into your life, and give you that assurance that there was a moment in time that I faced the impossible. And I can call on that moment in history and say, truly God is with me in that event. And God will be with me in this event that I'm facing as well. And so when we look at the Hebrews chapter 11, faith enables us to worship God correctly, as did Abel. Faith enables us to walk with God as Enoch did. It enables us to be obedient as Noah. It enables us to be like Abraham, to trust God that He will raise your son even though you give him to God. Moses refused to be known as a child of the world, but understood that he was a child of God, and nothing would deter him from his identity. First, child of God, then child of Pharaoh. Faith is understanding, number 1, that we are God's children. I know I am. And therefore, when I look at this pagan, this absolute reprobate, screaming and shouting, whatever he does, for me, he's just a clown. Because I serve a righteous God that holds my heart and holds my hand. The second stone I would encourage you to pick up is proper armor. As you've seen in David's event, David picked up the armor just too heavy and cumbersome. And yet he just took up the simple armor. Ephesians chapter 6 talks to us, and he says to us, be strong in the Lord and his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil come, you'll be able to stand your ground. Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, breastplate of righteousness in place, with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. Take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. Pray in the Spirit on all occasions, that all kinds of prayers and requests. Here's the key. That's a one-size-fits-all for all of us. And yet we find it didn't fit David, it fit only Saul. And God's saying to you and I want you to put me on. The third one I want to encourage you is to have courage prompted by experience. David recounted to this man and said to him, when a lion came to me to carry off the sheep from the flock, I went after it. I pursued it, rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it and killed it. I killed both the lion and the bear. The uncircumcised Philistine will be like it. Sorry to say this. He's not a hond. He's just a dog that must be put down if he is too vicious. He's just like a bear that must be put down when he attacks God's people. And David is saying, that's all you are. You will never cause me to fear. But this God will deliver me from the hand of the Philistine, just as he delivered us from the paw of the lion and the bear. Joshua told us to be strong and courageous, because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So we can say with confidence, the Lord is my helper, I will not be afraid. For we know that in all things God works for good for those who love him and according to his purpose. And he will be with you and I till the very end of the age. 2 more stones. The fourth stone, always remind yourself that this battle is the Lord's, not yours. Step out of the way and let God do his thing. Let God do what God does best. You see, the key behind it all is that so often we battle with these things. The fourth stone is the one of initiative. I want to just mention here, once David has sorted the stuff out in his head, once he sorted these things out in his mind, that this is where he stands with God, this is where he stands with this clown, he thought in his mind, let me go for this cat. Let me go for him. And he takes the initiative. Let me tell you why that is so important. Sometimes our fear can immobilize us to the point that we feel so hopeless and helpless that all we can do all day is sleep, just to escape the imminence and the overwhelming odds that we are facing. Are you at a standstill? Are you feeling immobile at the moment? Are you just saying, well, laat God's akker, or laat water oor God's akker gaan? Let things just happen as they must. Or are you saying, I'm going to stand up to this? You see, it only took one man to take the initiative on Goliath. The main guy, the big guy. Then the army followed. But it takes one man, as Ezekiel 22 verse 30 says, I'm looking for a man, one man among the church at Bellville, who will build up the wall, stand before me in the gap on behalf of my people, so that I would not destroy their land. One person. We look at this country and we become worried and we say, whoa, where am I going to go to now? No. God's only looking for one of us to say, this is where your nonsense stops. And the idea is, brethren, is it you? Is it me? You see, because 1 Peter 2:9 goes down to the identity which God gave us, and he says, you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people belonging to God, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Let's take the initiative on this thing. Let's beat them at their own game. Let's take spiritual things to a physical world and say, let's see how you hold up. You see, David's competency was not how good he was with a sword. His competency was how strong his heart was, because he understood who God was long before he understood and evaluated how good he was with a sling. One more stone, perseverance. Brethren, I cannot underscore this more than I'm going to. You cannot give up. You cannot give up. You see, salmon flows downstream when they are dead. Live salmon swims upstream. The church is a counterintuitive organism. It's counter reality of this world. It's countercultural. You are countercultural. When you face the world and it shouts its immorality at you, you say no. I want to close with a story of Florence Chadwick, my favorite story. She attempted to swim from Catalina Island to the California coast. She entered the water, a thick fog of mist just settled itself on her path. And she was blinded by the fog. She seemed disorientated, and then she gave up. She finally decided she couldn't go on. They pulled her into the escort boat. And you know what is shocking about this? She was only about 100 meters from shore. And when she got out, they said to her, what happened? We were shouting on the side of the boat for you to keep going. Here's the key. All the encouragement you may receive is not enough. It's not enough. You need to look beyond the fog. You need to look beyond the misconstruing of your reality. And you need to listen to that gentle voice that says, don't give up. Where God says, don't give up. You're almost there. Don't give up. Keep going. In an interview, they asked her, what happened? What went wrong? You were in a perfect cage. We've made sure that there was no danger from sharks around you. What went wrong? And she said, all I could see was hopelessness. And sometimes Satan does that to us. He clouds your world around you and he throws a dense fog around you that all you can see physically is hopelessness. But God is saying to you this morning, I want you to look beyond that. And I want you to see with spiritual eyes that I am your Father. That nothing that you have tackled will come to ruin. You've just got to keep going on. You see, you may be a hair's breadth close to that turning point. But no matter who shouts what at you, it depends on how you are going to handle that final stretch toward victory. There's a confident expectation even in Revelation. He says, do not be afraid of what you're about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison. You'll be tested and will suffer persecution. Be faithful even to the point of death, and I will give you the crown of life. You see, the victory lies in the hands of the one who completes the race, not to the one that has these growth spurts. It is the one who hangs out in this marathon until the end, until he is done or she is done with what God has assigned to you. Don't give up no matter how it looks. And remind yourself always that this battle, because you are God's child, belongs to him. Depersonalize it, because the minute you do that, you will sink into depression. Say, Lord, this battle's yours. I'm giving it to you this morning. Take it out my hand, Lord. I've battled long enough with it. And Father, thank you that you're my Father, and I don't have to fear anymore. You know what you must do if you are battling. The elders are here, amazing men, love God, and they'll pray with you. Just spend time with you and encourage you. There are men here and women here that are exceptional people that will advise and spend time with you to help you so that you can overcome this challenge. Don't miss this opportunity. Maybe today you said, I'm ready to step over that line, become a child of God. Wherever you must make a decision, that's yours. Let's stand and sing our song of encouragement.